Hi, and welcome to Peninsula Players Presents. Today, we're going to pick up at the end of 1940 and go into 1941. The last time we were here with Audie, hi Audie,
Hello.
at the end of 1940, Carolyn Fisher, Richard Angarola, and Leo Lucker were working at the Foster Music Store in Green Bay at Christmas time. And also, something else that happened in 1940 that's important in determining what happened in 1941 is that Caroline gave up Hollywood,
She
right?
did, correct. She did. I think the combination of Rhodian um, enlisting into the Canadian Air Force and the just realizing what it took to run a theater. She really wanted to help Richard with that. So there's this little commentary I had found from her that she had given to a reporter, which was Miss Fisher gave up a promising career in Hollywood films to return to the Midwest and devote all of her time and efforts to the summer theater that she and her brother, director Richard Wiley Fisher, established in Door County 6 years ago. In addition to acting as the leading lady, Miss Fisher serves as the business manager and publicity director for the company, and in this way, she's busy 24 hours a day.
He certainly was.
She was. And then she didn't return to California, but she was then wherever Rodian was training in his Air Force classes in Canada. That's where Caroline spent her
Yeah.
winter, was with him.
So as we're going into the 1941 season, we just want to set the stage a little bit about what was going on in the world and in the country at the time. And so in the world, there was,
There was things going on. Yes, definitely. Germany was starting to bomb London, and a lot of the churches that Christopher Wren had built were either being destroyed or damaged. They were also bombing other cities, including Belfast and Wales, and not only that, but Italy was starting to invade in Africa, and British forces were clashing with them, and as well as with forces in Germany and other places where there were all sorts of European invasions, as well as the Soviet Union also bombed Helsinki, Finland.
hmm,
So there's a lot of conflict going on overseas.
it must have
And
been quite alarming for people in this country to see all of this happening.
to see all of it. So that's going on. And in their own world, there's the big band sound is on the airwaves. So the music
Right.
of Jimmy Dorsey and Glenn Miller, and we're introduced for the first time to Captain America in the comics, and by the end of the year, Wonder Woman. So there's
And
some
I
of those
think,
aspects.
wasn't Bugs Bunny made his second
He
appearance?
made his second appearance and got his first film credit. So the first time it had actually like said starring Bugs Bunny
Well,
on
good
the
for him.
screen.
And also at the movies.
At the movies was Orson Welles' Citizen Kane, and I believe Gone with the Wind was showing at that time. Came out that year, and The Maltese Falcon and Dumbo.
Yeah. So a lot was going
It
on.
was.
So as we're going into the 1941 season, there are a bunch of company members who had been with the players before who, for various reasons, did not return, which of course affected how things went. As you
Right.
mentioned, I think it was on May 17th that Rodian earned his wings.
Did, and Caroline was there in New Brunswick, Canada, to watch him receive and get high honors. He graduated with high honors from his flight school, and then they were awaiting to see what his assignment would be
Hmm.
and if he would be shipped overseas or what. And then all of those things are secret, so you could never share that information with
Yeah, just a
anyone.
reminder that Rodion Rathbone, son of Basil Rathbone, was a British citizen, that hence his joining the Canadian Air Force. And because of that, because of Caroline being gone, Margot Fisher, her sister, and Leo Lucker, sort of that this coming season we're going to play all the leads.
They're going to play the major leads, and Leo was also there to help Richard direct in case Richard got called, in case whomever gets called up.
Mm-hmm.
And because they'd already lost another company member, James Ludenberg, who was with them the season before and directing the student groups in the wharf, he'd already joined the army.
Mm-hmm.
So he's in basic, training in the military. Another company member, Stacy Keach, and his wife, Mary, couldn't return from Georgia where he was teaching because they were expecting a baby. So
and they
that blessed event, and they had one. And so
Junior, who was born on June 2nd, 1941.
So they stayed there. And Stacy ended up helping found the Savannah Playhouse while he was down in Savannah, Georgia. Mm-hmm. And Leo was also teaching in Georgia. So we've got the California connection, we've got Georgia, and we have people in Chicago who are traveling up, and we have people out east. So Walter Appler at the end of last season went out east to fulfill a contract, and he was doing really well establishing his career, and he didn't come back for 1941.
And what did he do out there?
He really became a classical actor. So he had, over the years, had performed on Broadway 7 times, including in, I believe, Richard III, and I've lost his list of shows, but I know that was one of them, and of these classical plays. And
The Liar, I think, was one.
That was one, yeah. And he passed away while rehearsing it, in rehearsals for a Bernard Shaw play that was opening on Broadway, and they had to delay.
Well, so good for him. He was off on another career.
On another career, yes.
And another person who did not return was David Bruce.
David, right.
And that... I have to keep reminding our audience that many of the people we talked about changed their names because of Hollywood. So David Bruce became Martin McBroom.
Or he was Martin McBroom.
Or he was Martin McBroom.
He was Martin McBroom, but his agent made him change it to David Bruce.
Right.
So he did, yes. He got an agent out in Hollywood in 1940. So he's out there contracted to Warner Brothers and making films.
And I saw that he appeared in over 60 movies.
Yes, and he became very good friends with Errol Flynn, and appeared in several of his films. And David Bruce's daughter is Amanda McBroom, who wrote the song The Rose. She's a singer-songwriter, and she actually wrote a song about her dad and Errol Flynn that's called Errol. It's a beautiful song. It's a tribute to her dad and how much.
Yeah. So that was what was happening to some of company members who had been at the Players before. Moving around and lots of events happening. And so one of the, as they're preparing for the season, Richard and Caroline didn't announce a schedule of plays. Yes.
And part of that is because David Bruce and other people that they knew in Hollywood, with the contract obligations that they had, they wanted to have flexibility in what shows they were going to have to offer.
So I think one of the things that's very interesting is, maybe especially about this season, is that the phrase "subject to change" was well used.
Yes, it was.
So the Players ended up doing 8 shows altogether through the season, but the season sort of mutated as it went along.
Yes, it did, for many different reasons.
Yes.
And
but so as we're going into the 41 season, one of the first things that happened was, tell us about the movie theater idea.
Yes. So part of Richard and Caroline's idea in keeping things fluctuating was also to have movies on dark nights so that they wouldn't have a night that was dark. They were going to show a film Monday and Tuesday, and another one, Sunday and Monday, and then Tuesday and Wednesday, and let the audience vote on what they wanted to see, and then switch it. Whether they did that or not, I don't know. but they had thought about it, and this was something that they had announced at the beginning of the season that they were going to do, but I don't know if they actually did.
Sort of a prelude to the Skyway Drive-In.
Right, exactly. And so this is 10 years before that even. So,
Uh-huh.
that was something that they were thinking about.
So,
And
yeah. So we
yeah.
get into the first show,
hmm
and that was not decided
It
concretely for a
it
while.
it wasn't. I mean, when they announced the season and announced their ideas, they announced that they would do private lives, and they didn't do it that
Oh, no.
season at all. So whether it was Caroline having to go back to Canada or what exactly, they decided instead to do, like, they announced it one week and then the next week they switched it to dinner at 8. And so they went from a small character show to not dinner at 8. What was it?
Tonight at 8:30.
Thank you. I keep getting those two flip flopped in my brain. But it's No Coward's Work, where he had 10 one acts. And so they took 3 of those one acts so that they could present a variety of the company members to the audience to start the season. So
Yeah, it was
they,
interesting. I read that when it opened, there were 10, and one of them, I can't remember the name of it, only lasted one performance, and then after that it was 9.
it was okay.
But they had also talked about other plays too for
They
the
did.
first one.
They were thinking of doing oh my gosh, Old Acquaintances, which was a vaudeville, a look at 2 character actresses in vaudeville where they could feature Caroline and Margot together on stage, but that didn't happen.
That didn't.
They looked at White Cargo, which was a production they had done the year before in the Wharf Theater, but they didn't do that either.
Hmm.
And oh, and then Private Lives was another one.
And was
And
Hands Across the Sea one?
Hands Across the Sea ended up being one of the one acts in the
Tonight at
of Noel
8:30.
Coward. Yes,
I,
so I finally figured that out. I was confused for a while.
yeah.
But within that, you got to see Maggie Magerstadt doing a one act, and then they also had Richard and Caroline doing a dance routine with Leo Lucker in like the third one act of that. So it was a little bit of everything for
Uh-huh.
the audience to open up with. And they
So
opened
they,
that on July 3rd of 1941.
so July 3rd they opened.
They
Then they get
opened,
going. And
yes.
again, this is still, the shows are just running 1 week each for the most
Right.
part.
They're just performing Thursday, Friday, and Saturday evenings. And
And
then they're
then they
rehearsing
do
all week.
Mystery on the Moors.
Mystery on, yes. And what they had done there is, because they had lost James Ludenberg, who was directing the students in the Wharf Theater, that program didn't exist then in 1941. And what they did was bring a lot of the student female actresses back in 1941 to enhance their studies by actually performing then on stage. So Mystery of the Moors ended up being a female cast. It was all
Hmm.
ladies. And a lot of the apprentices from the year before got to have some speaking roles, including Gloria, whom we can talk about later, but I wanted to just kind of bring that up, that was an entire female cast, and that was opened on July 10th.
And what was that? That was a detective story?
It was a detective story. It was like a melodrama, Edwarian melodrama with some mystery on the moors, and Margot having a comedic character as a housekeeper and added a little levity to the situation
I see.
and everything. So and
And then next,
and then next they moved into Camille, and so you've got Mama Fisher's beautiful costumes that she's probably spent the entire winter working, having your costumer as a member of the family, and your daughters, you can fit them. So
mhm,
she's, been crafting all winter long. And for the first time, weather has affected Peninsula Players. And
because at that time,
they were
it was still, the audience was under the stars,
under the stars, and it
right
was
there.
completely open air. Yes, right back there. And so the first performance opening night was rained out, and then Friday night was rained out. So they just decided to cancel it. and they postponed it for a whole week and then opened it the following week.
Mm-hmm.
And it received wonderful reviews from the reviewers and the patrons. And the comments within there was the extra rehearsal time really helped enhance the performances.
Ah.
And luckily enough, during my research, I stumbled across a patron from North Carolina who was visiting Door County that week and was a bit disappointed that it was raining and that she missed seeing Camille. But her host said, it's okay, they're going to do it the following week. But they were leaving, so they just decided to stop down and see what the theater in the garden was all about, and stumbled upon a rehearsal in progress.
And she wrote about it.
Yes.
And I have a part of the article here, which we'd like to read because it gives a flavor of that time and those people and what was going on. So this is what she writes. A rehearsal was just about to begin. The young director, Richard Fisher, appeared from the shadowy woods path leading down to the water and the housing arrangements of the players beside it. He was gaily stippled with scene paint and burdened with objects having no possible relation to the drama, being Camille. In one hand was a Coca-Cola bottle. With the other, he awkwardly gripped a large carton which contained 3 small kittens squirming around in the folds of a quilt. He was taking them into the sun for the first time, he said. They were deposited in a sunny spot to learn to walk in rays of heat. Mr. Fisher turned his attention to the rehearsal. Sitting in front of us was a slender young man in a light blue and much wrinkled cotton lounging suit of some sort. I love the way she talks about what the clothes they wore at the time. He spoke with much authority. In this group of college boys and girls, whose serious theatrical ambitions prompted them to act through their vacations, he was a professional. He was Armand, world-famed lover of Camille. Margot, he called to a symmetrical young lady who was assuming romantic postures in very short shorts up on the stage. Will you please put on a skirt? What's wrong with my legs? She said. Nothing, was the casual answer. It's for the movement. And the symmetrical young lady was Camille. She returned in a long and ruffled petticoat, which she swished about with romantic energy. Shortly, it was the moment for the entrance of the Count something or other, an earnest and hairy young man in a white undershirt, purple and yellow shorts, white socks, and sport shoes. And he entered with a manner of marked elegance. He was greeted with a laugh. A puzzled and naive face was turned toward the audience, a movement which considerably interrupted the elegance of the bow. Then bedlam. A Great Dane appeared, going straight for the sprawling kittens. Camille, Count, director, and extras turned their attention to the kittens. After consultation, the Great Dane was led off by Armand. The next interruption came from a small Scotty puppy with erect ears who came upon Director Fisher's Coca-Cola bottle. He discovered it would roll. He yelped with delight. It was Armand who also bore the puppy off. And then came Armand's entrance to make love to Marguerite. Wrinkles or no wrinkles, that young blonde man could make love, and in the manner of the intense, restrained, and Victorian lines he was saying. Victrola music accompanied him. Not once did the shivering and naked-legged young lady seated upon the steps with the prompter's book have to open her mouth. Armand stood quietly and declared his love with never a movement of impatience toward the object of his desire. He was standing thus when the scene came to an abrupt end. Someone had missed his entrance cue, probably the Count, and there was dead silence on the stage. Can't you ad-lib? Isn't there something you can do to keep the scene going? Called Director Fisher. I have done all that I can do, responded Armand equably, and keep within the period. That's the article.
It was so fun to find that.
Yes, yes, I get an idea of what life was like there.
Right. And as I'm reading it, I'm also going, oh my gosh, that's the neighbor's dog. The Great Dane belonged to the bookbinders. And there's just, the property is so close by, probably got out. And the puppy is Caroline's. She loves Scotty dogs. So knowing that, the critters are around, like they've always been there. So
But I understand the Great Dane was actually very sweet.
yes, yes, he was. He was a very sweet, sweet dog. And
So, so we had some kerfuffle with Weather and
so yes.
Camille, and then on July 27th, we had an interesting interruption.
We did, and the symphony came to perform from the Wisconsin Symphony, Badger Symphony. So working with the Peninsula Arts Association and some sponsors, there was such great success with the Russian trio the year before that a bunch of like-minded lovers of the arts got together to bring the symphony to Door County for what I believe is the first time. That's what the headline had read, that Door County would hear a symphony for the first time. Whether it was that specific symphony or any symphony ever, I'm not sure, but it's so amazing to know that they were there on a Sunday afternoon playing on the stage and then having all of those people sitting and listening to a symphony at right next to the water. It just was
Quite
amazing.
a mix of entertainment the players was thinking about with movies, plays, and
Like, and
concerts.
and classical music, yes. And
Yeah,
so that was very exciting for them to have that event
yes.
there again. Mhm.
And then, actually, around the same time, we're in July of 1941, the draft.
Right. That is when in the United States, young men were first um, needed to sign up for the draft. Any young man 21 years or older was needed to do that, and that's when
So
that was instilled. So
that
all this is still going on, and conflicts are still arising, and things are, you know, happening.
so that changed the lives of many people
It
in the
did,
country.
and put lots of worries in, especially the younger students that they had working, that they brought up. So there was a couple young men in the company, and I'm sure that was in the back of their mind as well while they were trying to learn this craft. So
So they do Camille. The symphony
yes,
comes, the draft starts, and
draft
then
starts.
we move on to the rest of the shows.
Yes, and then they move on to Skylark, which they do at the end of July, and that also features Leo and Margot in the leads, and again, beautiful costuming by Mrs. Fisher, and that went over really well with the public as well. And then we're going to move into another classical play of Rebecca, and this is the American premiere. So Daphne du Maurier had adapted her novel into a stage play that had been performing in London, and this was the first time that it would be performed in the United States.
Oh,
And so it was, and during the performance of this play, Leo sprains his ankle
ah,
and had to probably perform on crutches Sunday because he hurt, or Saturday evening because I think he heard it then, which in then turn, as they're rehearsing for the next show, which is Little Foxes, he's in a wheelchair for most of it because he still can't walk on his foot. And that's one of the little clunky bunks that happened during the run of that show for Little Foxes. But that
oh.
one also had trouble with weather and got rained out for a performance.
Well,
And
we're lucky now with our permanent roof over the theater that we don't
right,
get rained out.
right, yeah, it was some of these experiences. And another thing that happened during the run of Little Foxes was one of the actors, Wilms Herbert, um, developed blood poisoning. He had an injury, and all of a sudden there was streaks running up from an infection that he had gotten. So Richard Fisher had to take over his role
Oh,
in Little Foxes in order to get that one up and mounted. So there were some setbacks happening that they had to roll with the punches with
and
for that.
in the time that both of us have been at the theater, we've
Right.
certainly had to deal with things
Right.
like that.
Yes, exactly. So just knowing that was like, oh my goodness, and then this happens, and then that happens,
Yeah.
and then the Russian trio comes back.
Another music event.
Another music event. So they come back in August, on the 17th of August, and perform another concert. But this time with one of the musicians is different. I can't remember which one. If it's the violinist.
Michael, the founder,
Yeah, yeah, that was it. So
and Nina on piano, and Ennio Boglioni on cello.
yes, and so that's exciting because it's just that classical music, and to have the chamber orchestra and a symphony performing before it was probably the spark for the Peninsula Music Festival, knowing that there was an audience for this music in Door County and people who were passionate for it out of the Peninsula Arts Association. It's kind of just as Sam Wanamaker back in 1937 was inspired to build the Globe, knowing that the Peninsula Players helped spark and helped be a part of this as well. It's just that when I know there's times we say that Peninsula Players is the cornerstone of the arts in Door County, and I think part of this tradition and our foundations of getting ourselves built up was the love that Caroline and Richard had for all of the arts, not just performance, but
And there were
films.
people who up there who wanted that.
Right. And Richard's taste, even with scenic design, he had a real, as we've said before, a real Renaissance man. He had a passion for visual arts as well as performing arts and musical arts. So
And so after the Russian trio plays,
after the Russian trio plays, we go into another mostly female show with Wilms Herbert being the only male actor in it, Ladies in Retirement. And this is how they survived this pre-war season, was a lot of female roles in this season because they just didn't have the men to perform. And that production people enjoyed, and that was like one of the headlines was, only one man in the show. Oh my God.
and Ladies in Retirement was a film also.
It was, and the stage play was presented before that movie then was released. So there, and then they're going to close the season at the end with The Man Who Came to Dinner with Leo. And what I've kind of found out as reading for that last holiday weekend of 1941, in Door County, it was very busy. So when I was reading some articles after that holiday weekend, all of the hotels were booked, movie houses that were there were filled, and nightclubs were filled. So the people were using that last holiday weekend as like a pre-big hurrah, as they're seeing everything going on around them in the world, as a chance to get together for those 4 days. So it was a big weekend. So what the Fishers decided to do was to perform The Man Who Came to Dinner Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, and then perform Little Foxes on Monday because of weather complications, that people didn't get to see it. So they were going to do something in rec for the first time to make up for those rainouts. Well, the weather still didn't cooperate. And Thursday and Friday got rained out. And Saturday had its own adventures for that performance. And it started out calmly, but during the second act, a big thunderstorm rolled in and just dumped and started saturating itself onto the patrons. And a majority of them stayed. They stayed through the act, they sat through it out, and the players went on and they performed right up until intermission. And then they invited whoever wanted to stay into the lodge to finish the show and serve them hot coffee and sandwiches. And so they set the stage for the final act and performed it in the lodge for the patrons who stayed. And that was animate. I was like, wow.
I bet that was really fun.
That was really fun. It was a great story to stumble upon for that. And then they did come back the next night and perform Little Foxes, and they received a standing ovation for
Yes.
their efforts for the season. So it was a high note to end the season on. So,
And that was the end of the season.
and that
And
was
also, you had mentioned Wilms, Herbert, and Gloria, but talk about a little bit of the some of the people that were newcomers.
certainly. So Wilms Herbert that I mentioned, he was a radio actor. So he came up from Chicago. He had been in several radio shows on WGN, and he ended up going to LA for a while and working there. And he worked with the gentleman who was on Dragnet, um,
Oh, Jack Webb.
Jack Webb. Yes, he was one of the performers with Jack Webb prior to him being on Dragnet. So he's a radio star.
He was
So
also a singer with the Los Angeles Opera and Light Opera.
with right, and he spent his summers touring with the Chattanooga and Toby shows. He ran a dance studio. He was very multi-talented, and he was born in Chicago.
Mm-hmm.
And here it is. Uh, prior to Dragnet, he also started with Dick Powell. So Tina and the Tin Man, The Master of Mystery, and the Today's Children of the General Mills Radio Hour.
Uh-huh.
And that was just
I love hearing about a lot of these characters that came through the players because they're sort of, I have a feeling they're sort of like Renaissance people.
Gloria Linari, whom I mentioned. She was learning, she caught the eye of her music teacher. She had a beautiful singing voice. And the music instructor introduced her to Caroline, and Caroline gave her a scholarship the year before to train and work on her poise and presentation and stage presence. And then so in 41, Gloria comes back and she was in 5 of the shows.
Mm.
So she didn't sing and perform vocally, but she was learning stage presence and timing and blocking and all of those. And Gloria ended up performing eventually later years on under the name of Gloria Lind or Gloria Bentley. And she performed at the Lyric Opera. Their first season. So she was into Fledermaus at the Met. At the Lyric, she performed in 9 operas, including Puccini's La Boheme, before she moved on to the Met Opera in New York, where she performed from 1957 to 1962.
Wow.
So again, the wide variety of arts from
Mm-hmm.
film, radio.
So the season ended,
The season ended.
and then the family, the Fishers, dispersed to various places.
They do. And I think Richard was going to start naval. He wanted to become a naval officer, so I believe he was going to switch to studying at Notre Dame. Caroline was going to Canada, to wherever Rodian was going to be. Margot was returning to Hollywood, California with her Hollywood executive husband.
Oh, tell us a little bit about him.
Cedric Francis.
Francis?
Yes, eventually, later in the 50s, becomes one of the producers for the Technicolor two reelers for Warner Brothers. So those double reel news features that people would see in the film clips and so forth. So he's working at the studio, and that's one of the eventually that's the career path that he ends up down. So
Which is interesting, like John Walker, who was managing the theater just before I got there. He ended up going to Hollywood and working with Disney and Pixar.
Exactly. So it is fascinating because even Stacy Keach eventually becomes like a director of films, and just how the different paths cross and mediums cross. But
they finish the season, the company disperses all over the place. And then we have an event that changed the world on December 7th.
Yes, December 7th, 1941. is when Pearl Harbor was attacked.
Which changed the course. And then on December 8th, the next day, the United States and Great Britain declared war on Japan,
Yes.
which leaves us at a great place to stop, because the next time we'll pick up with really for the United States, the war years and how that affected the Peninsula Players. So thanks, Audie, again.
Thank you.
And we will see you next time. Thank you.